So, Chantel kind of stole my line, but
sorry.
Your roadmap sucks, your roadmap sucks, your roadmap sucks, and your roadmap sucks. Well, in fact, every one of your roadmaps sucks. I can pretty much say that in any room I ever go into, because it's true in pretty much every product organization out there. But let's explore why. But to start with, I guess, Chantel gave a quick introduction. I like to share my mission with people, because I spent a bit of time thinking about this recently. And really, it comes down to helping people make better decisions. Think clearly, make better decisions, take action, and drive outcomes, because that's what product work is all about. So that's the mission I've kind of codified down to, and I'm a player turned coach. So I used to be a product manager and then a product leader, and about 7 years ago, I stepped out on my own to help product people. And I've probably trained a couple of thousand, worked with a couple of hundred companies, but I really love it when I go deep with a product leader, with a head of product up to a CPO, and really help them be the best they can be. That's what coaching is all about for me. Now, I'm going to warn you, I like to ask questions to my audience when I'm having a talk, especially when we're nice and small and intimate like this. And I have done more discovery interviews than any of you combined, which means I can be quiet, silent for longer than any of you. So if I ask a question, just play the game, give me an answer, because I'll just stay quiet otherwise. So here's the first question. Why does your roadmap suck? What's wrong with it? Constant changes, absolutely. What else?
Sometimes I don't see a link between the roadmap and our goal or mission.
Yeah, that kind of link to the big picture and where we want to be, often missing. If you even have a big picture or a goal of where you want to be. Often when I go into a room to run a training course and talk about product strategy, I ask the product team, do you know what your company strategy is? And almost universally, the answer I get back is no. And there's usually a product leader in the corner of the room that looks at me aghast. But we have this operating plan, they should all know about it, what we're doing. Well, your job next week is to make sure they know what it is then, because you clearly haven't communicated it to them. Well, then you get even worse case where I was working with a founder team recently, where the founders are complaining about the fact that the product team are not delivering their vision and their strategy. And you say, have you told them it? Oh no, I couldn't possibly tell them it. It's confidential, it's in the investor deck. How do you expect them to deliver against it then? So we spent a good few days in a room getting it into a shape where they were prepared to share it with the team in a form that would communicate to the team where they wanted to go. Maybe didn't have all the details, all the insights, because they wanted to keep some things back. I think they were, frankly, wasting their time. You have to assume that you can out-execute your competition, not that actually you've got some special sauce, that this thing that you've thought of, ideas are cheap. Actually delivering is the hard bit. What else is wrong with your roadmap? Time-based planning, yes. Well, I have another talk called Going Beyond the Now, Next, and Later roadmap. I'm even pushing beyond that. But most roadmaps look like a Gantt chart, like a project plan. And we all know the one thing that happens with a project plan. We don't deliver it. Or something changes, or it goes to the right, i.e. it's later. So there's 100 different things. So great, we've got started. Well, I start out with 3 primary headlines when I think of what's wrong with a roadmap. Number 1 is they are poorly defined. What the heck even is a roadmap? Is it a Gantt chart? Is it a timing plan? Fundamentally, we ask a roadmap to do too many jobs. That's actually a quote from John Cutler, if anyone's heard of him. He tweeted this about 3 years ago now, and it just stuck with me. Yes, that's the problem. We ask it to do too many jobs. So what is the job of a roadmap? Potentially keeping us on track. Yeah, it's one potential use case and one job.
Getting people aligned on the goals to a vision.
Alignment, yeah, and alignment on the goals or on the direction of travel to get to that goal.
Stakeholder management.
Well, I'd put that together, like alignment
Similar,
and
but
communication.
not necessarily, for different sort of purposes.
I mean, the stakeholders is a word that's kind of overloaded at the moment. Now, my very good friends and close collaborators, Bruce McCarthy and Melissa Appel, have just released an awesome book on stakeholder management called Aligned. Go and check it out if stakeholder management's a key thing. But we kind of, do we mean external when we say stakeholders? Do we mean senior leaders? Just the developers, they're stakeholders as well. Here's the hint, everyone's a stakeholder, but we tend to use it to mean senior person. A stakeholder is anyone who has a stake in the outcome, who cares about the outcome or is impacted by the outcome. So I try to get a bit more specific. I think it was Grant Hunter from Product Growth Leaders. His episode on my YouTube channel goes out tomorrow, and in there he talks about stopping using the word stakeholders and instead talking about collaborating peers or collaborating partners. Think about we're working together. But yeah, so we've got kind of some alignment, some communication, getting everyone on the same page. I tend to land on two primary things of communication and alignment as the primary jobs of a roadmap. But we also treat it as one person's artifact. Who here's a product manager? Do you own the roadmap?
I hope so.
You might maintain it, but the team needs to own it. That's something I would really recommend. Think of it as something that belongs to the team, because if they own it as a whole, with you as part of the team, they're going to be much more bought into it. Don't get me wrong, you're probably going to do most of the work to maintain it, but it is, especially if we ever think of it as any sort of commitment. That's a dangerous word around a roadmap, but if we ever think of it that way, if the team is not committed to delivering it, good luck. We treat it as a fixed plan. It's got dates, it's got times. Now, if I say Q1 to you, what date does that mean? If I'm releasing something in Q1, what date are we releasing it?
End of March.
31st.
31st of March, that's the product manager's answer. 1st of January is the salesperson's answer. 1st of April is the engineer's answer. 1, it's April Fool's Day. And 2, they checked in the code at 11:59 on the 31st of March, but there's a lot more things that need to happen before it can actually go to a customer. And that's not bashing engineers. I'm a former engineer. But we have different perspectives on time. Everything goes to the right. And the reality is that a roadmap's expected to change. It's plan A. But I started working on plan B yesterday because I learned something new. I might not update or publish the roadmap until the end of the quarter, because frankly, I don't want to just keep the document constantly in flux. But it's out of date before you've even communicated it most of the time. That doesn't mean it's not valuable. Number 2, and I know there was I kind of gave you 4 things there, but as I'm cheating, but they were under the headline. Number 2 is it's incomplete. It doesn't consider the internal and external forces. Anyone here do consumer products? What's the big trade show in Europe that you've got to have them ready for? It's across in Barcelona. MWC. If you haven't got something ready for that, then you're not talking to the press and the market at the right time. If you sell into the education market and it's not ready in June, they can't buy it ready for September for when the schools start again. There are natural cycles that drive certain dates. Dates are not evil. They're a reality of the world. And you've got certain funding requirements or things to do within your business. They drive certain things. Knowing what those forces are, knowing what that context is super important. You can't ignore it and try and live in this perfect product world. By the way, if anyone's read Inspired, what Marty describes in that book exists in no single company ever. He's basically merged like 15 different companies where he's seen some here and some there and created this perfect nirvana that doesn't exist in a single company at all. Focus on getting better, not on doing perfect product. We miss the user and the customer on our roadmap. We put the feature on there. I'm going to ship something that does this. Great. Why should I care as a customer or a user? I actually really like to put jobs to be done on my roadmap. You know one thing about jobs to be done? They don't tend to change very much. The customer always has the same job. Just the solution changes over time. The performance level changes over time. When you do your discovery and figure out, that feature doesn't really solve the problem for the customer, but this one does, I'm still solving the same problem. I'm still delivering against the same job to be done. My roadmap didn't have to change because the job to be done, the problem was on the roadmap instead of the feature. We miss risk. If you did not know this yet, as a product manager, your job is to manage risk. That is your entire job in reality. We use this term discovery all the time. Salespeople hate it, by the way. But all it means is manage risk. We have a bunch of techniques we use to manage risk. Feasibility, viability, value, and what have I forgotten? Feasibility, viability, value, and usability, to use Marty's taxonomy. You're looking for the risks in those areas. That's why we run experiments. Experiments are basically an application of the lean startup to take risk away. And discovery should be an order of magnitude less effort and less cost than building the thing in the first place. At least 10x cheaper and faster. If it's not, you might as well just build it and test it that way. But you're doing that discovery to take the risk away. You can't take all of the risk away, though. You can only take so much, and then you've got to act. Because if you try and take it all away, you're going to be slow and expensive and never deliver anything. So it's about balancing the risk, managing the risk, knowing which is the biggest impact. What thing, if it goes wrong, is most important? And as a product manager, you're generally going to be focused on value, which is customer value, and viability, which is business value, i.e., will a customer pay for it, and therefore can we make money from it? And then your designer, as your peer, is going to be worried about the usability. Will a customer keep coming back and using it and get the value from it? And your engineering counterparts are going to make sure it's feasible. Can you actually build this thing? Can you deliver the value? This is what you're trying to balance. Discovery is not the goal of product management. Discovery is a tool and a technique that we use. In fact, I think it was Georgie Smallwood at the Mind the Products in 23. We're on a leadership panel together. And she said in her company, they'd stopped using the word discovery. They changed it instead to say due diligence, because their commercial team understood what that meant. It was about managing risk. Actually, I've seen something over the last 15 years where product managers seem to have forgotten your job is also to be a translator. You need to speak their language, not take product management language to them and expect them to understand it. You're the bridge between all these teams. You need to speak their language. Look, I'm an ex-engineer. I can geek out with the best of the engineers and speak their language. But I've also done an MBA because I wanted that deep business language. I'm not saying you have to all go off and do an MBA, but learn to speak business. It will make your life so much easier. Number 3, they're poorly communicated and aligned. I said that's the core focus of a roadmap. Well, firstly, it'll probably start out with no clear story. The roadmap is not a plan, it is a storytelling tool to say, this is why we're going, this is the direction of travel. And this was really hammered home with the Chief Product and Technology Officer I coach. The CEO said to him, I need a roadmap. He just picked up product. He'd been the Chief Technology Officer and now he's becoming CPTO. He said, okay, yes, I'll go and build one. And he started building this big, elaborate roadmap. I just started coaching him. So my first comment to him was, what does your CEO mean by a roadmap? What does he need from one? What's his job to be done for a roadmap? And I do workshops that are essentially like a design sprint, but for roadmaps. And so I've asked people to do lightning demos for roadmaps many times, which means I have a Miro board full of thousands of roadmap visuals. So I just copied and pasted, like, I don't know, a couple of hundred into a Miro board for him and said, go and show these to the CEO. See what he wants from his roadmap. What's going to communicate for him? After looking about 10, the CEO said, hold on a second. I know exactly what I want. It's in the investor deck from 3 years ago. I just need you to update it. And I'm going to show you what it looks like a little bit later. But we got to that clarity. He still built the more elaborate roadmap because he needed that to work with the development team, but the one that the CEO needed to engage with the investors was fundamentally different, and it told a different story. We also need to communicate regularly. We often don't communicate often enough. How often do you present your roadmaps? Any idea? You nodded your head. How often?
One each quarter.
Definitely not enough. Because most of the people who need to know it aren't in the room that day. For you, it feels repetitive. It feels like you are a broken record because you have to say it time and time and time again. I've done this talk in a similar way. I've done this talk many times. You've never heard it before, though. So this is new information to you, and that's the same when you're presenting your roadmap. The people in the room have not heard it before, or they've slept since then, and so they've forgotten it all, or they're salespeople, and they're like magpies, they've definitely forgotten it all. Again, I've also done sales, so I'm allowed to bash them. So you've got to keep repeating it and reminding them. In fact, sales teams quite often love it because they start going off down this other path, and by reminding them, you bring them back on path of what is the strategic direction of the organization? Where should we be going? Which types of customers should we be talking to? Because usually you've got that context around your roadmap because it was part of that story. Now, I generally encourage people to do this face-to-face or live, synchronously, sharing it. But that's not always possible. In a large distributed organization, maybe that's not feasible all the time. So record it and put it out on an internal site. Share your roadmap. I was actually encouraging another coach of mine to do that with her strategy deck at the moment. She's just written it and it's this, I don't know, 15-page document. But there's like maybe, like me, I've got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 7 or 8 words on the page. And I've probably just said 50 to 100, if not 1,000 words. Every presentation has that. Now, your corporate presentations have probably a lot more words on the page than mine. That's a bad practice as well, by the way. But if you don't tell people what the message is behind the visual on the screen, they'll just make it up. They'll see one line like, I don't know, passkey implementation, And they extrapolate from that to 1,000 things of exactly what it means to them. Especially salespeople, then they're out there selling it to customers. It'll solve all your problems. To get them on message, make sure they know what the message is. Communicate it regularly, and that might mean recording yourself. I'm actually experimenting with Speechify at the moment to see if I can get it to sound enough like me that I can take the speaker notes from PowerPoint and generate a video for it. It's an experiment I'm doing at the moment because I want it to still sound authentic. We forget about who our audience is. I said the CEO is probably wanting something different to the development team. So we need to think about who our audience is. Who is the audience of your roadmap?
Different people at different times.
So give me some examples.
When you're building it, it's more for strategic peers. When you're presenting, it's maybe for the build team and business analysts, product owners, etc. So it varies.
Yeah, so we've got the strategic leaders within our organization. We've got the operation and development teams. They're internal. What about external?
Yeah, often customers, right?
Especially if you're in B2B, they are absolutely an audience. In fact, I think I'm typically on 5 audiences I define these days for my roadmap. 3 of them are, one of them semi-external. Sales I consider sort of external. So I have prospects, which then is the sales version. Customers, so they're existing customers. I have more trust of them. I'll tell them more. I have partners, because if I'm working with a partner, they need to be aligned with me as well. I have my development and operations team, and I have my leadership team, or execs, or investors. They kind of all go together. And that's 5. But those are 5 views, one roadmap. Still one roadmap. The information is exactly the same. It's just presented differently. Maybe filtered differently. So Jana Bastow drew this graphic a few years ago, and it's if you haven't come across it, there's a great book called Roadmaps Relaunched, again by Bruce McCarthy. I'm slightly biased, he's a good friend. But he presented this in the book from Jana, and it kind of shows what type of information you might show to different audiences of internal initiatives versus public things. Like we tell people outside our organization only about public information, things we're prepared to share, whereas we tell the internal people about internal stuff. On the other hand, if I show the high-level detail to a developer, they don't really take much notice. If I show the low-level detail to a CEO, they don't take much notice. So I have to differentiate for the audience. And in fact, I think there's a third dimension that we could put on here, make it 3D, of time horizon. If I give a CEO something that's a 3 to 5 year roadmap, that's what they often want, because they want to see the direction of travel. They know it's going to change, but they want to kind of have that feeling. On the other hand, if I show it to a developer, they don't believe a word of it, and you lose all credibility. So you've got to differentiate. And in some organizations or some industries, you can plan 5 years, by the way. In others, you can't. So you've got to consider what that time horizon is reasonably. I spent a ton of time in automotive. You can plan in 5 years increments quite easily. It takes 5 to 7 years to develop a car. You can basically align with those programs. Whereas consumer tech, yeah, you're probably not going to think any more than a year out at most. And your high fidelity information is in the next 3 months. Cool. You can have different levels of fidelity. You can have lots of detail in the short term and much broader stuff in the long term. So much so that when it came to designing these, whilst I kind of have a perspective on it, I found that every company is so different that with my co-host on my YouTube channel, we also do a bunch of road mapping workshops. And we developed a canvas called the Roadmap Audience Canvas to help us capture the needs of each of those audiences, so that then we could design the right view for the right audience. So we have the name and the description. In the middle, we have the jobs that they want from that roadmap. Like, they might want certainty of what's going to be delivered when. That might be the job that they use a roadmap for. Might not be a great job or well aligned, but that might be how they think of it. And then they provide certain information that comes into the roadmap, and they extract certain information from it. And we have to close the loop on it. So we get them thinking about, what do we need to include? What do we not need to include? What are we going to find out from them? And like, what format on frequency? When are we going to present this? Is it once a quarter? Is it once a month? Is it in a lunch and learn? Is it a video that goes out? How do we get this stuff? How do we share this stuff and close the loop on it? And so this is part of the workshops that we run, but it's, as a tool, it just helps you think. It's basically a persona, but focused on your roadmap. Or in fact, if I look at it now, it could work for pretty much any artifact, not just a roadmap. And I lied, I said there were 3 primary ones, actually there's 4. They're often just ugly. There's poor design, they're not pretty. I like pretty artifacts. It helps get people on board. It helps them buy into it, what's on it. Helps them read it and take notice. And if I'm honest, none of the tools out there do a good enough job. They're all just ugly and very operational. And I hate Jira with a passion. I hate ADO with a passion. I don't know a better option, but I hate them. Even the dedicated road mapping tools that sit on top of those don't do it for me enough. So I usually end up back in PowerPoint or G Slides or something like that, because I'm telling the story. And what we did through the last sort of 3 years is look at all the different visual patterns we could find. We distilled it down to initially 12. I've got a bonus 2 for you as well today that look like this. We have the classics, the Gantt charts, the board, and the table. I bet 99% of your roadmaps look like one of those 3, because they pretty much all do. And if they're working, like Frank, if you have a feature and time-based roadmap that is delivering a ton of value, don't change it. Leave it alone. There's other things that you can fix in your organization that are far more important. But the chances are it's not. Let's be honest. But then we get into what I call the ambiguity set. We have a funnel. Starts quite narrow, so near term, we can't put very much in there. Then further and further out, we have more optionality because there's more things in there. Knowing full well, a lot of them won't be there by the time we come to deliver. Or anyone a Star Wars fan? That's the crawler. Goes off into the distance. It actually goes the other way around. It's like, we can see this bit, we can put really big text here and it's quite clear, put really tiny text back there because it's not very clear and we don't want to read it. Or this is actually my personal favorite, the radial or radar. In fact, I switched the conversation to what's on our radar, not what's on our roadmap. 50% of the companies I've shown this to in my consulting activities use that now for their strategic roadmap. And the reason is, it's really subtle. It's less usable. There's more friction. Now, we're always taught to take friction away to make it easier to understand. Sometimes that's the wrong choice. Here, you have to stop for a second and think, because it's no longer left to right for time, which in the Western world, left to right means time. It goes from the past to the future, or from the past to the future. In China, it goes the other way around, by the way, so got to be a little careful. But in here is the near term. In here is getting further out and further out. And because it doesn't go left to right, it goes out. People have to stop and think. And when they stop and think, they have to actually read it. And when they read it, they have to understand it. So they get a better picture of what's on there. We also have then really simple ones, a chevron, a literal road, or what I sometimes call the moonshot. We're going for this big thing. I don't think I've seen a McKinsey slideshot set without one of those in there. There's always something like that. And then lastly, we get to, well, I couldn't name them nicely, miscellaneous. Anyone here ever used an opportunity solution tree? So Teresa Torres has this tool called an opportunity solution tree where you put your outcome that you're trying to drive at the top, and then the opportunity space, problems, needs, etc. of the customers in the next layer, and below that the solutions, and below that the experiments you're going to do. It's a value-based view. I can use that as a roadmap. In fact, I've had a number of times when senior leaders have said, I want a roadmap. And we turned up to the meeting with an opportunity solution tree. And at first they complained, it's like, that's not a roadmap, it doesn't show time. Well, it kind of does, as long as we order it the right way. If we put the things that we're looking at as the highest priority here and the lowest priority here, we've got a time dimension. But what it allows us to do is have a value-based conversation about the direction we're going, instead of a time-based conversation about what we're going to ship when. This one is a plot, an X and a Y, typically time versus something else. Maybe it's risk. So if it's over here, it's a long way out and high risk. It's probably not happening, but we've got a chance to deal with the risk. If it's over here, really short term and really high risk, almost guaranteed it's not happening. So you start to be enabling that conversation, that communication, that alignment piece. Then this one, I guess it could go in this group or it could go in that group even. I call it the 3 horizons. McKinsey have a model called the 3 horizons of growth, which is a really powerful model when you're thinking about your portfolio. And really what we're saying is, here's our core business, what are we doing here? Here's our growth areas, what are we doing there? And here's our genuine new business, what are we doing there? If you're looking at a portfolio view of your products, then that can be a really powerful way of doing it. So there's the names. But we actually recently came up with 2 more. It's a constant research. And this one came from working with that CPTO. That's the territory diagram. These are the things that we're doing now. These are the next things we're going after, and these are the longer term. We're expanding our territory. Or as the marketeers might say, we're expanding our TAM, our total addressable market. And then another one, which is a nice metaphor, is the domino. We're doing this small thing that enables us to do this bigger thing, and eventually we're going to knock down this huge thing and create this ton of value. It's quite linear in nature, but sometimes there is that causation and that linearity in things. And so communicating it that way is simpler. So this broadly comes from a ton of research, talking to a lot of product leaders. In fact, did we meet in London? I'm trying to remember. Were you part of the CTC, or was it just in Product at Heart? Okay. So lots of product coaches. Some of the people we know jointly. In fact, you should join the channel at some point, Chantel. There is Marty Kagan on there. There is Bruce McCarthy. Who's around from around here? Andre Albuquerque. Oh, I probably pronounced his name terribly. He's on the channel. Yes, but I mean on this channel. So we're going to get you on for an interview. We talked to anyone in products, actually a bunch of product leaders as well, about product practice, about road mapping practice. It's called Talking Roadmaps. It's a collaboration with a friend. So this is me, this is him. Together we're talking roadmaps. You might find it interesting. It's available on all your favorite podcasting platforms and on YouTube as well. And that's as far as I go with the pitch. I think tomorrow's episode is Grant Hunter from the US. He works with a guy called Steve Johnson, who's been on already. He was one of the original pragmatic marketing guys, as an example. It's like relatively big thought leaders in the space. So just as a reminder, what's wrong with your roadmap? Well, it's probably poorly defined. What the heck is a roadmap in your organization? Secondly, it's incomplete. It's going to be missing a load of context and information around it. It's probably poorly communicated and aligned. That you're just not sharing it often enough. And it's just ugly. So last literally last element is to say I am writing a book at the moment. It's called It Depends. It's all about product decision making. Now, as every product person or anyone who works with a product person knows, any question that you get asked, the answer is it depends, or maybe no. But then no is just a hard it depends. Because the reality is product work is all dependent upon the context. So that QR code will take you to a page that allows you to either choose to join a mailing list to keep up to date, or there is an early readers club if you want to get involved and help shape the book. We meet about once a month. It's not mandatory, but you also get to see early copies of the chapters if you're interested. Beyond that, I'll leave you with just the thought of let's make some better roadmaps.